Welcome back to the Gita in Action podcast. My name is Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers, and we are officially finishing up the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā today. And what we do after each chapter is we have a day where we just kind of go through the flow of that chapter so that we really can extract the essence of what it's trying to teach us, what we're learning in each chapter. And in this way, we kind of see how it flows together, and hopefully it sticks in our mind a little bit, the big takeaways. So that's what we're doing today. Chapter 11 is what we are discussing today. And this chapter is called the universal form. And this chapter is one of the most dramatic and emotionally intense chapters in the entire Gita. Because up till now, Krishna's been teaching Arjuna philosophically. He's been explaining the soul, karma, yoga, devotion, detachment, the nature of reality. And gradually, we've been going through this process with Arjuna. We've been seeing his confusion is lifting as he's conversing with Krishna here. And now in this chapter, the philosophy suddenly becomes experience. And we all know how that really starts to, in our own lives, when philosophy starts to become experience, how that really hits us differently. So this is what's happening to Arjuna. He's heard that Krishna is the source of everything, but now he's seeing it. And what unfolds is pretty overwhelming for Arjuna and for all of us as we're going through this with him. The entire universe is revealed within Krishna. Unlimited power, unlimited beauty, all of it, time, destruction, creation, everything simultaneously within him. And at first, this vision is like awe-inspiring. It's like amazing, and then it becomes terrifying. And then by the end of the chapter, something very surprising happens. After seeing the most unimaginable display of divine power possible, imagine that for a moment, seeing the most unimaginable display of divine power that anyone's ever seen, Arjuna realizes that what his heart is truly longing for is relationship. And this is deeply relevant for us too, because material life has trained us to chase bigger, 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 right? More powerful, more control, more certainty, more achievement, more stimulation. This is material existence. But this chapter 11 challenges this whole idea. It goes deeper than that. It asks, what actually satisfies the heart? What really brings peace? Is it control? Is it power? Or is it connection with divinity? So as we go through this chapter, and we'll see today as we move through this chapter, we'll see Arjuna move from a place of curiosity. He just wants to understand more, to awe as he sees the universal form in space, to fear as he sees the form of Krishna in time, and then ultimately to surrender, where it's just all just too much. And he just wants his friend back. He just back into this loving relationship with Krishna. So this is Arjuna's journey. And there's so many, there's big lessons along the way. And there's just little places for us to even like smaller lessons for us to learn through the language and Arjuna's experiences. So this is what we're going to walk through today. And because this is a pretty long chapter of the Gita, it's 55 verses. We're gonna talk just about like different sections as we move through and extract the main points from the different sections to see how it flows together. And I don't think we'll read the verses today because there's so many of them. But if you want to open up your Gita and follow along, I'll tell you kind of what section we're on, and you can kind of see where we're going, where we are and where we're going. Okay, so in the first verse, Arjuna begins with gratitude. If we remember in the last chapter, Arjuna heard all of Krishna's teachings. And again, we see that the confusion that paralyzed him at the beginning has really started to lift. And so now, instead of questioning Krishna out of doubt, Arjuna's wanting to understand him more deeply, and also for the benefit of everybody else. So he's been told Krishna's the source of everything. We've talked about that. That lesson has come up many times in the Gita. Right? But now he really wants to see how that works. So right away, we learn something important, that clarity comes not from trying to force understanding our own way, but from sincerely hearing from Krishna with humility and openness. So we have to be in that seat of the student. We have to, and in that we have to surrender a little bit of control so that we have that humble heart that's fertile for spiritual knowledge. And we see this quality in Arjuna again and again. He's inquiring with sincerity and a service attitude. Okay, so then we move to texts 2 through 4. And in these texts, Arjuna reflects on how everything comes from Krishna. Everything rests in him. Eventually, everything returns to him. And then very humbly, he makes this request. He says, if you think I'm qualified, please show me your universal form. Again, this is not out of skepticism, but it's out of love and curiosity, desire to understand Krishna more deeply. And again, we see Arjuna's disposition here. He's not demanding. He's inquiring submissively with humility and a service attitude. Because spiritual vision is not something that we can conquer through entitlement. Our material conditioning sometimes suggests otherwise. Like we have to get more on top. We have to get more in control. We have to have more opulence. And then we'll get it. But spiritual reality doesn't work like that. We have to show up with a humble heart, right? Full of love. And in that, we can only receive this knowledge through grace. Spiritual vision, we can only receive through grace. It's nothing of our own accord. And we really have to understand that. Because as long as we're trying, we're fighting, we're forcing, we're gripping, we're missing out. We're not allowing Krishna to come in and to intervene. Because we're not in that mindset. We're not looking for that. We're rather looking for the opposite. We want to be the controller. Right? We want to figure it out. No, we have to. It's a ascending process. It has to be given to us through grace. Or is that descending? It has to be given to us through grace. Okay, so now text 5 through 8. Text 5 through 8. So Krishna agrees. And Krishna here, he describes the universal form a little bit. He kind of prepares Arjuna for what he's about to see. He tells him what you're about to see is beyond ordinary perception. It's not just a bigger form, but this is reality contained within Krishna. And then Krishna tells him, you can't see this with ordinary eyes. So he grants Arjuna divine vision. Again, we're so limited by our senses, so limited. We don't even understand how limited we are. I mean, if we really thought about it, we see that my dog can hear so much better than I can. There's other beings around that have much expanded capacity of senses than we do. So what to speak of spiritual vision? This is something that on our own, we don't have the faculty for. It has to be granted. It has to be given to us by God. Material senses are just not even enough. And Krishna will reveal himself according to the devotion and sincerity of the person's heart. It's not something that you earn, right? It's not something that you're intellectually, you get smart enough to perceive. It's no external qualification. You just have to have a sincere and devoted heart, and Krishna will reveal. And this is beautiful too, because it doesn't matter for us. It doesn't matter your material package. Like, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how beautiful you are, like all the material qualifications in your life that have got you to where you are or haven't, doesn't matter for spiritual revelation. You just need a sincere and devoted heart, and Krishna will come in there and plant the bhakti seed and give us revelations, as he's doing here with Arjuna. So then in the next section, verses 9 through 14, this is the narrator's description of the universal form. So Sanjaya's description. And so he's saying the universal form appears, and there's unlimited faces, unlimited eyes, there's weapons, ornaments, celestial beings, blazing brilliance, expanding in every direction. He says it's as if 1,000 suns rose in the sky all at once. It's pretty unbelievable. And Arjuna sees the entire universe, all the beings, all the worlds, all the existence unified within Krishna. Remember, it's like he's standing in the middle of an ocean and you don't see anything but ocean, and he's like bowing in all directions because it's just like everywhere. It's just so all encompassing. And instead of this making him feel more powerful, it's actually quite overwhelming. What we see him do here is bow down in awe and humility. That's like his response. And this is important because we often think that peace will come if we can just understand and control everything. But Arjuna here is seeing more than anyone else ever has. And instead of becoming more controlling, he becomes humbled. He understands his place. He understands just how small he is. So the Gita shows us that peace doesn't come from this mastering reality. It comes from surrendering to the one who sustains it. That's like, when you say like, stay on your side of the road, like that's our side of the road. Like we just relationship, just relationship with divinity. The grace that comes from that, the connection that comes from that will give us this peace of mind that we're so busy searching for in this world. Right? I just need to do this. I need to have a plan. I need to, and it's not that there's a place for those things. Those things are like, important to some degree, but we shouldn't put all of our faith in those things, such that if something deviates relative to the plan that we set up, we are like disorientated. We have to understand that God has such a bigger plan for us than we could even conceive. And our role is not to try to control it, but rather to try to surrender to it, rather to try to align with it. And this is what we learn as chapter 11 goes on. So this is Arjuna. He sees everything. It's just completely overwhelming. And he just bows down in awe and humility. And then we get to this next section, 15 through 18, text 15 through 18, and Arjuna begins describing what he sees. He sees Brahma, he sees Shiva, he sees sages, he sees demigods, he sees all these levels of existence just residing within Krishna, from the higher planets to the lower planets, just everything. There's no beginning, middle, or end. Krishna's he's just inside. Krishna's not just inside the universe, but the universe itself exists within him. And so then we see Arjuna's descriptions are turning into this just glorification. He's realizing like, wow, this is the supreme person. This is the source and resting place of everything. And this is another shift. True spiritual realization softens the ego and makes one humble. If your spiritual practice isn't softening your ego, isn't making you more humble, isn't making you less I-centered, you're doing something wrong. Because a true spiritual practitioner should start becoming a little less self-centered and a little more humble. And that doesn't mean that you join a spiritual community and everywhere you look, everybody's has a soft ego and is humble. because everybody starts from different places. So it's not for us to judge. Right? Everybody starts from different places and goes at different paces. So it's not for us to judge, but it's for us to turn inwards and look at ourselves. Right? When I'm done with when I associate with these people, when I study this scripture, when I engage in these practices, am I feeling a little bit more humble? Am I a little bit less self-centered? And we see the practice does this to us, because this is what spiritual realization does. This is true purification. Okay, so now Arjuna is realizing that this is the supreme person. And this is a big one for us too, because this is a big point of this whole revelation of revealing the universal form, is to set the standard that, not just anybody can say that they're God and we believe them. They should be able to do this. This is the standard. And Arjuna's realizing this. Wow, he's realizing who he's dealing with here. And so then in the next section, 20 through 25, the mood shifts again. And now the vision becomes terrifying. Right? Arjuna is seeing like blazing fires come from Krishna's mouths. The entire universe is trembling. Even the demigods are afraid. It's just like, and this is where like the Kala Rupa is really revealed, like the form Krishna in the form of time. And suddenly Arjuna, he's no longer just amazed. He's like frightened. His mind becomes disturbed. He loses like his steadiness, and he pleads like, just please be merciful to me. And this is where we see like this, that this unlimited power without a sense of intimacy can feel overwhelming. Arjuna's realizing in this, as this is being revealed to him, it's humbling him. It's making him realize how small he is. Next time that we get a little bit more power, a little bit more control, a little bit more certainty, we should understand this should make us humble. Right? This shouldn't be making us feel more power hungry, more in control. When we really understand the source of that power, the source of that control, the source of that knowledge, and understand that the source is infinitely more than like the tiny little taste we're getting, that's when it should make us humble. If it doesn't, then we have a partial understanding of what's actually happening, a very partial, very short-sighted understanding. And that's okay. But spiritualists in spiritual life, our objective is to expand the consciousness. Right? Is to elevate our consciousness and ultimately connect with God. And when we do that, these things naturally happen. We realize, wow, even though I'm Donald Trump, I'm still actually quite lacking. I'm still quite finite. The amount of power and resources I have is actually still quite limited. When you understand relationship with God, when you understand who God actually is, just like Arjuna is, he's experiencing this firsthand. No amount of material power control even compares to what he's seeing and experiencing. Yeah, imagine. And so then, as we kind of went forward a little bit already, but now we're like in 26 through 30, when Arjuna's seeing the warriors on the battlefield, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, like people that he had close relationships with, he sees them rushing into Krishna's mouth and being crushed by like these teeth, and there's like blood coming out. It's like pretty haunting. And this is where we talked about these beautiful metaphors. First, he says the warriors are flowing into Krishna like rivers naturally rushing towards the ocean. Then he compares them to moths throwing themselves into a blazing fire. So there's like two different ways that people are entering the mouth, according to this metaphor. And this reveals something pretty profound, right? That for the devotee, death is like a river entering the ocean. It's like a continuation. I think this is like 28 and 29, this metaphor that I'm talking about right here, if you're looking at the Gita. So for the devotee, death is like a river entering into the ocean. It's a continuation of existence and movement towards God. So it's almost like peaceful in that way. And it's like nourishing the land as it's moving towards the ocean. But for somebody completely attached to material life, death is more like the moth consumed by fire, where everything that they identified with is just suddenly stripped away. And we talked a little bit about the difference between, the passing of a devotee in this and the passing of somebody that doesn't have God in their lives, and how different this looks. And that's what these verses are alluding to. I think when we actually talked about this verse, Agnidev was just passing, and his death was like glorious. My friend was there, and she was describing like a little tear in his eyes, and how he just like his whole face just like lit up at the end. And there was like a room full of like 150 devotees just like chanting God's names. Juxtapose that to somebody who's just gripping, holding on to material life, whether it be material relationships and it's just painful. I mean, there's no other word for it. But through this, Krishna is revealing not just his cosmic power, which is a big part of the universal form, but he's revealing himself as time itself, the force that eventually destroys everything material. That's what and this part of the universal form is what's never been revealed to anybody before and never will again. Krishna as time. And the reality is nothing escapes time. Nothing in the world lasts forever. And this isn't meant to be like pessimistic. Sometimes when you talk about this, like actually, my step grandpa passed away this week. And about a week before he passed away, my mom was talking about how they have an up north house, like a vacation house that they wanted to go visit. And neither one of their healths were very good, my grandma or my step grandpa. And my mom was talking about how, well, they feel like they should be using it because they have it and they haven't been there for a while. And nobody wanted them to go because it's in the middle of nowhere and it wasn't safe. And anyway, I told her, like, it's like just holding on to things, like none of that's going to even matter. But you see this, like in those final moments, what people are gripping onto. And it's sad. And that's not to be pessimistic. That's not to be judgmental. That's just to be real. Just to be clear about what this is and what it isn't. And when we spend so much of life trying to build permanent happiness on temporary things that are ultimately going to be taken away from us, the reality is that's more terrifying than anything. And Krishna's trying to help us to understand that. That material things eventually they're going to change, they're going to fade, they're going to disappear. This shouldn't make us hopeless, but this should redirect our hearts towards what is eternal. And that's what this revelation is intended to do. It's not intended to make us fearful or to make us pessimistic or hopeless. It's supposed to help us redirect our hearts from what is temporary to what is eternal. And if we do that now, if each of us do that now from wherever we are, we'll be that much more prepared when that time comes for us to make our final breaths. And we'll be that much closer to making that transition as a river entering into the ocean, as opposed to a moth flying into fire. Both of those are realities. And it's up to us, how we're spending our time, where we're putting our consciousness. It's up to us in our lives every day, the decisions we make, which one we're moving closer to. So in that way, it's like we should be grateful for this revelation. It's like the ultimate wake up. Like, wake up. And that's what Arjuna's experiencing. He's shaken to the core. And this is the next section. Now we're moving to 31 through 33. Arjuna asks, who are you in this terrifying form? And this is the famous verse when Krishna replies, I am time, the destroyer of worlds. And then he proceeds to tell him that the outcome of the battle is already arranged. These warriors are already destined to die. And Arjuna is just being invited to become an instrument in Krishna's larger plan. And this becomes one of the deepest lessons of the chapter, right? That real confidence doesn't come from believing that we control everything, but real confidence comes from alignment with Krishna. Because no matter how good of a controller you are, no matter how skillful you are, you're always going to run short, right? Because we're finite beings. This is just the definition of who we are. And when we try to take the position of that who is infinite, which is God, it's going to be pretty stressful for us because we're not designed for that. It's like overload. We can't possibly handle that. And to the degree that we try to force ourselves into that position, things will start to break down around us, and we will be full of anxiety, right? Or depression, or like these things become like epidemics because we have no faith in God. And in that, we try to make ourselves or everybody around us God. And then we go through life seeing how that's such a fallacy. It's because we're not designed for that. Nobody's designed for that. Real confidence comes from alignment with God. This is, we get some amount of confidence from ourselves or from control, but ultimately real confidence comes from alignment with God. Everything else will fall short. It's like building a house on a pile of sand. Just a matter of time. It's only a matter of time, because that's the nature of material energy. So, and at the same time, Krishna's not asking Arjuna to become passive. He's asking him to act. He's asking him to act, but with humility, dependence, and trust. He's asking him to act, but with humility, dependence, and trust. And this is spiritual life. This is what the Gita is teaching us. That for most of us, I was having a really hard week last week. And it's just one of those weeks where like Prema was so demanding. I had a lot going on at work. It was just like all these things hitting me from different directions. And I was just like, kind of like one day, I think I left a message for whatever. I was like, I just like fantasize about going to the airport and just like getting on a flight so I can just like escape my life. It's like the very real solution for that just comes into our mind. I mean, it was like, just a fantasy. It wasn't a reality by any sorts, or even close to that. But it's very real that we want to do that sometimes. We want to run away from our problems. We want to run away from our lives. We want to run away from our duties because they're causing us stress and anxiety and all of the things. And the Gita is teaching us that it's not our lives that we need to change. It's not our external lives that we need to change as much as our internal disposition. Because to the degree that we show up for our duties in this mood of humility, dependence, trust in God, right? As a service to God. Right? And we let go of showing up in the mood of I'm the controller. This has to go this way, or if everything's resting on me. Right? It is this very like self-centered mood. We will see our lives become more peaceful. We will see our lives become more aligned. This is the way out. It's not running away from our lives. It's changing our internal disposition in the way that we relate to the things of our lives. And this is the lesson we should be learning in all of this. And when we have those days, like that day that I had last week, where it's just like everything at the same time, it's an invitation to step deeper into this spiritual knowledge, because by living it is the only way that we actually break free of some of these burdens that we carry, that are caused by our own misunderstandings, our own our partial understandings of reality, ourselves, and our relationships with God. So this is the message of the Gita. He's telling him, act, do your duty, but don't do it out of self-centeredness. do it with humility, dependence, trust. Do it for me. This is where the chapter evolves to. Do it for me. It's a big lesson of the chapter. And such a lesson for all of us. Because most of our dharmas here is not to go sit in a cave and chant all day. Not to abandon our responsibilities, but relate to them differently. So that brings us to 35 through 42. And here Arjuna saw Krishna as a form of time. It is terrifying, the most terrifying. It was like a horror film in his living room. Like it's not just you're watching it on the screen. It's taking place right in front of his face. It's to real people that he knows and circumstances that he's in. That's what he's experiencing. So he's trembling, and he begins offering deeper prayers. And in this section, he realizes that the same Krishna he treated casually as a friend is actually the source of everything. So it's like he had this close, intimate relationship with Krishna. And then he realizes that he's actually just like this great, powerful person, the most great and powerful, like the goat, right? That's his best friend. So the more he sees Krishna clearly, the more humble he becomes. This is like a simple thing, but a real thing. The more he sees Krishna clearly, the more humble he becomes. To the degree that we're proud, we are not seeing things clearly. We're not understanding, right? But Arjuna is here. And in that, he's glorifying Krishna, as the cause of all causes, the supreme refuge, the source behind all existence. And then he apologizes. He remembers joking with Krishna, eating with him, speaking casually with him as a close friend. And he realizes, I was just interacting so familiarly with the Supreme Lord himself. And this is another thing we learn here, that the intimacy with the sacred should deepen reverence, not erase it. Some of us sometimes make that mistake, right? We get too familiar that the reverence goes away. But this intimacy should deepen reverence, not erase it. The closer that we become to God or spiritual life, right, the softer, the more grateful, and the more humble the heart should become. Right? We shouldn't become super proud that we can recite slokas and want to do it in front of everybody, as much as wanting to help others learn and connect to Krishna. We should be more concerned about those things. Not that that's not important, but we shouldn't be so attached to recognition and prestige as much as we are to service and humility. And that's a natural byproduct when our spiritual realization becomes deeper and deeper. And so then the next section, 43 through 46, we're round and home plate here. We're getting close. Arjuna says, this vision is extraordinary. He says, but I'm terrified. The universal form, it established Krishna's greatness beyond any doubt. But Arjuna's realizing, and we should too, that this overwhelming power alone does not satisfy the heart. What he truly longs for is his personal relationship with Krishna. Krishna in his personal form that's more conducive to personal relationship because he can relate to him in that way. He has two arms, two eyes. It's not spectacle, not cosmic grandeur, just relationship. So this brings us back to one of the central teachings of chapter 11. And that is that power may astonish us, but love is what the heart is truly seeking. And this is where we're going in these final sections. In 47 through 51, Krishna starts to comfort Arjuna. He explains like, hey, this was a really rare vision. Like nobody has seen this vision. You make sure you understand what you just got the privilege of seeing. So even the demigods don't get to see it. But then he gently withdraws the universal form. And he first reveals his majestic four-armed form. And then finally he returns to his two-armed form, the form of Arjuna's beloved friend. And in that, immediately Arjuna feels peaceful again. He feels grounded. He feels restored. Because Krishna understands something very deep, and that is that all may humble us, but relationship is what heals the heart. Relationship is what heals the heart. And this is also very relatable to our own lives, right? Because sometimes life becomes chaotic. It becomes destabilizing. It becomes overwhelming, like my life last week, or the way that I felt in that moment anyway. But when we reconnect with Krishna underneath all of these changing external circumstances, we'll find that that's where we actually feel peaceful again. That's where we actually feel peaceful again. We don't have to go into overdrive trying to fix our lives, quote unquote. And we don't want to become passive either. We want to do what we can to improve things, but we can't get caught in this narrative that that's what's bringing peace alone. Because if so, then we're just tearing down one house of cards to build another house of cards. And it's like, no. Get a solid foundation first. And that solid foundation is relationship with God. And then from that place, whatever's built on that, from that foundation, becomes strong because of what it's connected to, not because of what it's built on, what it's composed of in and of itself. And that's what we have to understand. If we're just tearing down one weak house to build another one, it's only a matter of time before another tsunami is going to come and knock it over. But if we're really focused on that foundation first, that indestructible, eternal foundation that is our relationship with God, even if something gets blown over, the foundation in itself is so strong that we're still standing. And the deeper our relationships come, our relationship with God becomes, we just become kind of like just an observer, watching as the waves come in and out. Oh, that got knocked over. That's funny. Okay, no problem. Let's see what's going on over here. But it has to start from that foundation, or we're going to be stuck on the ups and downs of life indefinitely. Just like the moth to the fire, right? Just getting ready to go into another body, just stuck in this cycle of birth and death, stuck in this cycle of happiness and distress. That's material energy. So now we're finally at this last section. Krishna brings the entire chapter to its final conclusion. After revealing his unlimited cosmic power, he explains that he can't truly be known through just scholarship, austerity, ritual, pious achievement. Like you can't do anything to catch Krishna. He's not attained through external qualification or even spiritual accomplishment. Again, you have the whole Gita memorized, great. Doesn't mean you can catch Krishna. He's revealed through devotion and grace. If you have the whole Gita memorized and devotion and grace hasn't started growing in your heart, devotion, humility, service attitude hasn't started growing in your heart, big deal. It's like, well, what did that do for you? So the mood is not, let me become spiritually impressive enough to conquer God. The mood should be, Krishna, please help me truly know you. Understanding that any revelation comes directly from God. And our only qualification is a sincere and devoted heart. And when Krishna sees that, that's fertile soil for him to come and plant the bhakti creeper. And then in the last verse, this is like the mic drop verse of the chapter. Well, one of them, there's probably several of them, but Krishna explains what this devotion actually looks like in practice. This is what we talked about in our last session together. He says, make him the ultimate goal. Work for him, not for the ego. Work for him. Do your duty, but for him. And in this, protect the heart from selfishness and distraction. So Arjuna could have been fighting because he was so angry at the core of us for all that they'd done to his family. And in fact, that would be totally justified. But Krishna tells him, don't fight for your own selfishness. That will just be a distraction to attaining me. Fight for me. And in that way, you'll become peaceful and you'll attain my eternal abode. Doesn't that sound much better, right? Than just fighting for just doing our duty in our own selfishness and becoming distracted by our own desire and endeavor to be God instead of worship God. And that's what our duty can be. Our duty can be a form of worship. Even if we screw up, if our heart, if our intention is pure, Krishna will correct. It's all Krishna's plan anyway, right? Just like he said, everybody's already been destroyed anyway. It's all Krishna's plan. Don't get confused in thinking that it's all about you, because it was, and it never has been. Right? And then he says, remain kind and non-envious towards others. So be everybody's genuine well-wishers. This is his instruction. Make him the ultimate goal. Work for him. Protect the heart from selfishness and distraction, and remain kind and non-envious towards others. I was just listening to a lecture yesterday about how nothing makes God more upset than when we don't have nice relationships with his children. And I just imagine anybody here who's a parent, if your children are fighting. I don't have that yet because I only have one, but I've heard that it's heartbreaking. Even if one child genuinely did wrong to the other, the parent still doesn't want them to hate each other and be mean to each other. They want them to kind of work it out, right? Or at best just accept and move on. So Krishna, he wants us to remain kind and non-envious. And the love that a parent has for their child is like a tiny spark of the love that God has for all of his children, all living beings. Right? Imagine that. So this is a big instruction. And there's examples all over our text of people with deep spiritual realization who have exhibited this. Jesus Christ, he was praying for his perpetrators as they were killing him. And there's so many examples like this. This is a person with true spiritual realization, when that connection is so strong. Imagine his connection to God is so strong. He's just an instrument of his will. He's taken himself. He's not the center. No. He's made God the center. And in that, God's pain is his pain. It's amazing. We aspire to this. And this is the practice of bhakti. This is why we wake up early and we chant God's names in meditation, and we come together and we study these scriptures. It's helping us to develop spiritual vision. It's helping us deepen spiritual realization. And you may say, I'm so far away. And that's good. It's good to feel that way. But at the same time, when you look back years ago, you're probably a little bit further than you were years ago. And this practice tells us, the Gita tells us, once we apply ourselves to spiritual life, once we really commit to it, Krishna will take over. So we don't even have to worry about it. It's not even in our hands. We just have to have the sincere desire and endeavor. And then Krishna's mercy will take us the rest of the way. We just have to hop on that mercy train with sincere hearts and a desire. And the rest is history, right? So this is a lesson. In the end, spiritual life, it's not about becoming the controller or building a perfect image of ourselves. It's about harmonizing our lives around God with sincerity, humility, and love. So by this is the end. This is the whole of chapter 11. Arjuna has seen something no one has seen. Okay, the universal form, all of its existence resting in Krishna. The part nobody else has seen, this time destroying everything material. Right? It's overwhelming. It's beyond human comprehension. And at the end of the chapter, what we see here, it doesn't end with Arjuna wanting more spectacle. It ends with him wanting Krishna. Krishna means the personal form, the loving form, the approachable form, the form where relationship is possible. And if we take any lesson away from this chapter, this is the lesson I want us all to just leave here with. Because material life constantly conditions us to think, if I just had more control, if I just had more certainty, more power, then I'd finally feel peaceful. Okay, next time you see your mind going into those narratives, no, this is a mind trap. This isn't actually what you need. This is just a temporary solution. It's like a Band-Aid, having more control, more certainty, more power. Because Arjuna, he experiences unlimited power directly. And his heart is not fully satisfied. But what finally restores him, and we see this in the Gita, it tells us this restores him to peace, both materially and spiritually, is relationship with Krishna. That's the ultimate solution. And this is incredibly important because this chapter ultimately teaches us that spiritual life is not about becoming the controller. When I was just so frustrated with my day last week, because it's like work was blowing up, Prema was blowing up, everything at the same time. I was so frustrated because I was so sipped in this mentality that I'm the controller and nothing was going my way. So I'm just frustrated. And the way out is not to go to the airport and hop on a random plane, right? Because I'm just going to end up in that same situation with different variables. Because as long as I think I'm the controller, those problems are going to chase me. That's the problem, the internal disposition, not the external circumstances. The external circumstances are gifts to show us just how off we are in our internal disposition. It's a gift from Krishna. Here you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. I get it. I see it now. So it's not about becoming the controller. It's not about conquering reality, having the perfect plan. Everything's lining up perfect. My kids are doing what I want. My work is doing what I want. Now I'm happy. It's not even about becoming spiritually impressive. Okay, now I memorized the whole Gita. Now I know. No, it's about becoming connected. That's it. Becoming connected. Connected deeply enough that even in the middle of this uncertainty, loss, fear, chaos, we remember Krishna's still here. There's still a higher intelligence behind everything. And I don't have to carry the burden of controlling the entire universe myself. Once we come to this realization, we become steady, just like we see in Arjuna. This is what steadied him. So this is where the chapter leaves us. Not with escapism, not with fear, but this invitation. This invitation to harmonize our lives around God, to become instruments instead of controllers. And if we don't know how to do that, pray about it with a sincere desire. Krishna will reveal. To act strongly when necessary, but without hatred, without this me-centered agenda. And ultimately to understand that while power may astonish us, love is what really brings us home. And that's, the next day after I had that really intense day, my boss didn't come into the office, so I didn't go into the office. And so Prema was at care. So I just got to chant for like a few hours straight. And that's what brought me back. That's what we want to come to as devotees. When we're caught in these things, we have a habit of relying on temporary Band-Aids, a Netflix show, an eating binge, drug of choice. Come back to Krishna. Just try that on. Try that on reaching out to our eternal, real shelter. And see how that starts to transform the heart little by little. It doesn't mean that you won't be back in the same place. You won't get caught in this narrative again that we've lived for lifetimes. Its conditioning's deep. But it does mean that the next time, maybe you'll make that decision a little bit sooner to connect back with Krishna before you make another decision that brings you lower. Until you're to the point where it's just a natural part of life. You're so connected all the time that you can't be pushed over by the waves. Okay. You're truly an observer of the waves, and you're just so connected to the foundation. Okay. So this is what we learn in chapter 11. This is what chapter 11 teaches us. Can we have some reflections, shares? Stella, Shraddhanjali.
Hi, everyone. It was beautiful. Everything. I was just saying to Kalachanji that I've I've never I've never understood how deep this chapter is until now. So it was really I was just the whole going through the whole thing and verses that I used to skim over, and they're so deep, and then you brought it all around, and I mean, before it was sort of like, yeah, I kind of got that, like Krishna's personal form was the greatest, you know, but just all that other stuff that you just went over was like, wow, um, chapter 11 just really came alive for me, which has always been sort of, not my favorite chapter in the whole book. So, um, thank you for making it really, really come alive.
I hear you. I had a similar experience getting deep into it. It's a very exciting chapter. So much there. Yeah, thank you. Mariah.
Hare Krishna. It's just so amazing how Krishna aligns ideas, so closely from one context to another. So just yesterday, I had the pleasure to talk with Mother Madhuri, or not Mother, but with Madhuri down at New Vrindavan, and we were just sharing different things, and then we ended up on the subject of like, well, often it's not like something outside of us that needs to change. It's something within us. And she said her husband gave her this beautiful analogy. So I wanted to share that with you all. How, when he first became a devotee, he came to the Sunday feast, and there was this big feast, and it was so delicious. And so he ended up staying. But then on Monday, it was just rice, dal, chapatis. By Tuesday, it was rice, dal, chapatis. And Wednesday, again, dry rice, dry chapatis, and dal. And he was like, come on, where's the vegetables? Where's the good food? So he prayed, you know, like Krishna, I don't know if I can really handle this. Like something's got to change here. And after he said that prayer the next day, he still had the rice, dal, and chapatis, but he enjoyed it. And so it was just like, yeah, he prayed something has to change. And it was his internal disposition that changed. He eventually learned to love the rice, dal, and the chapatis. He wasn't praying for an external change. He was, and it's just, it's just so beautiful to be reminded of that all the time, because as much as we're reminded, we're always wanting something outside to change. And it's always, almost always, an internal change. So that's what came to me during this class today. And it was just so funny how I was just talking about it yesterday. So thank you. And I agree, this chapter, I missed some of it, but having the overview was so beautiful to really get into. Just all the nectar that's in every verse that you don't really get it until you're studying it and someone, really dives into each verse with you. So thank you. Really appreciating this class.
Thank you. We're so happy you're back, Mariah. Yeah, love all of your stories and reflections. Anybody else want to share?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Just a fantastic class. Thank you. I love your emphasis your focus on relationships, it's great. And I mean, I was thinking for 40 years of teaching, my guiding principle was always to foster and nurture relationships between the students and the text, between the students and each other, and between the students and me. And I felt like if I could help make that happen, everything would take care of itself. Everything would be okay. And I'm just really appreciating how in this class, that's just what you're doing, and how you are fostering, our relationships with the Gita for sure, and with each other through our shared experiences, and with you as our teacher, our fearless leader. And it's, and from that, a relationship with Krishna. And I have to say that in this time, that has, for me, that's really worked, and it, my life is better for it. Just from this class, we all, I think, look forward to the days we meet. But it's really, so much more than that. And I'm just appreciating that very much. And thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. It's Krishna's mercy, because my default is not focus on the relationships. My default is go, 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 mow you over if you get in my way. So for Krishna to be able to do what you just said through me is pretty remarkable.
Definitely happening. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else want to share? Jennifer, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, I don't want to, but I will. I've been going through a really rough patch with Krishna consciousness, and Krishna is throwing his mercy down on me. It feels like raining down on me. And I pulled my car over yesterday, and forgive me if I break down, but it's in a good way. I just pulled my car over. It's like, I am begging you to save me from myself right now. I'm wanting to do all these acting out things of not in healthy ways. And I have not done any of these things, but I'm really wanting to get outside myself and not go in myself. And thank God I have not done any of these unhealthy things. And I've been reaching out to people, and I've been telling the truth of what I've been going through. And in that, I've been able to see, I've been playing this blame game. It's like you. And that's what I really have been feeling. It's like this and this and this and you and look at that and and just feeling the stuff that's just, it's like up from old stuff that's been in my life and triggering and that. And from pulling my car over, traffic is all around me, and I was just like beating on the steering wheel. It's like, Krishna, it's like, come down here, see me. And something has happened. I just kind of, if just this sleep happened for me, and that's not what usually happens, but sleep and some dreams really came upon last night, really vivid dreams, and like quite beautiful. And my teachers came with dreams, and just lightened the load for me. And it's in a beautiful way, and it's the relationship, and I wish it was, if I've wanted to see Krishna, I've wanted to really see Krishna's form, and I've been begging for that because I've not seen Krishna. I've not seen Krishna's face, and I've not held Krishna. I've not had that experience. But I've had my teachers come, and it's just like, you have to wait. You just have to wait, and I'm not good with that. I want to create and manufacture and pave my way, and I'm very goal oriented. And if I do this, this will happen, and I want to know things. And I've been told to wait. And that is my relationship right now with Krishna, as I am told to wait. Yeah, but I've been I'm in temper tantrum right now. I'm pulling over in traffic. It's like, save me from myself. Save me. I am wanting to do all these exterior things instead of going in. But thank Krishna that he allowed me to sleep and dream and was given messages.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. The fact that you're here and you're so vulnerable and real about what you're going through and facing and what you're turning to is this. I'm looking forward to seeing how Krishna arranges your life. Because when we show up with that level of sincerity, get ready, because Krishna's gonna step in and yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, my friends. Well, that is our time together. Thanks for coming and being a part of this. It works. We're all experiencing it here together, and it's magical. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank